Okay. Hello, everyone. Wow. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'd like to send my apologies initially for my introduction there that didn't have any sound. There's a lovely, lovely soundtrack on that, but it was lovely that you laughed along with it all the same, so thank you for that. Welcome to Star Wars Celebration, and this, the Creatures, Droids, and Aliens with Neil Scanlon. It's going to be a great show. Welcome to all of you in the room, but also welcome to our viewers in the corners of the galaxy who are watching via the streaming of this very show here from Celebration. Sorry you couldn't be here with us today in person, but hopefully you're going to enjoy it wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Oh, don't want to think about it. Anyway, we have some people over here, some very special people I'm going to say hello to, who are in the best seats in the house. Yeah. Hello, you guys. I noticed you're behind a kind of a strap here. Is that to restrain you or stop me getting close to you? I don't know what that's for. But I am going to venture behind the strap, ladies and gentlemen, to say hello to this lady here. Hello. Hello. What's your name? Alex. Alex, and where are you from? Minnesota. She's from Minnesota. Yeah. Oh, yeah, whoop-de-woo. Yeah, Minnesota. So, what's your name? Leanne. Leanne, and where are you from, Leanne? Minnesota. Minnesota. Is this microphone working? I don't know. Minnesota. Project, darling, project. Minnesota. She's from Minnesota again. Yeah, you don't have to whoop again. And who are you? Caitlin. Caitlin. And where are you from, Caitlin?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. And what brings you to Celebration?
Loving Star Wars?
Yeah, that's it. What other reason would you have to be here, apart from seeing me? Okay. Sir, now you look, I'm no disrespect here, but you are a gentleman of more mature years.
Why, thank you.
You don't entirely fit into the demographic generally.
Yeah.
You are a Star Wars fan.
Well, yes, I am.
Since when?
Well, by marriage, since the original movie came out.
By marriage? What do you mean by that?
Well, she's a bigger Star Wars fan than I am, but I saw the original back in the theater in the day. Yeah.
So you're here under duress slightly then, are you?
Well, no.
Let's speak to the missus. So you're the fan.
I'm the biggest fan in our family, not the only fan.
You're the biggest fan.
Yes.
And what draws you to Star Wars?
Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah?
Yes.
For what reason?
Oh, he's the hero.
He's a hero, bit of a looker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't worry, it's okay. Do you? If I was to ask you, your husband here, right? What character is he most like in Star Wars? What would you say?
You mean him?
Yeah. Who do you think he's like?
That husband.
Yeah, that husband. Yeah. Go on. Who's he like?
I'm sorry.
It could be an alien. It can be a droid. It can be anyone.
I'll say Han Solo.
Han Solo. Oh, isn't that lovely? Jesus, Han Solo. Fantastic. Well, congratulations to each and every one of you for being in the best seats in the house. That's a very strange sight at the back there. What's going on? What's going on up here? What's happening? You seem to have a fan club. Who are you? I'm John Williams. He's John Williams. Of course you're John Williams. Of course you are. And I'm sure he'd be very flattered to see you right now. I thought you were like the Emperor. It's like with a stick. I mean, it's like, or you look like some deranged wizard from Harry Potter. I'm not sure what's going on, but that's terrific. Well, that's our best seats in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you all. Now, I think it's time we should crack on with this show. Oh yeah, you can do that if you like. Yeah. Why not? We're just getting warmed up here in the Wintrust Arena in Chicago. The Star Wars galaxy is full of wonderful creatures, droids and aliens, some friendly and some not so friendly. In the classic trilogy, these characters were created physically and brought to life by skilled actors. My pleasure. And puppeteers. For the prequels, these creatures, droids and aliens, were born within the digital domain and life given to them by the amazing wizards at ILM. In 2013, at Celebration Europe in Germany, I asked producer Kathy Kennedy about pre-production on The Force Awakens and her approach to our beloved creatures, droids, and aliens. Now, she told me for the new movies, they'd be using all the tools in the toolbox. Now, this meant instead of just relying on digital technology, the films would use a mix of techniques, old and new, to complete the illusion. Let's take a look. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce a master of illusion, the father of all creatures, droids and aliens in the new trilogy, Rogue One and Solo. Please give a huge celebration welcome to creature effects supervisor, Neil Scanlon. Welcome, Neil. Great to have you here. Well, that's quite an impressive reel there, isn't it? I mean,
Thank you.
Pretty spectacular, some of the things you've created. And we're going to go into depth.
Yep.
Look at some of those,
Absolutely.
those
Yes.
creatures and characters as we move through the show. But how are you finding Celebration?
Well, it's incredible. The first thing I'd like to say is to how incredibly overwhelming this is to sit in front of all you wonderful people that have taken this afternoon to come and see this show. I hope that you enjoy the next hour.
Absolutely.
So thank you to everybody that's here and everybody that's watching us. Thank you.
Now, Neil, thank you for being here. Now, before we get into our little chat, I feel we need to better understand what a big deal you really are within this world. No, you really are. From the age of 19, you've been working in visual effects and forwarding this exciting art form. Your early films include such classics as Return to Oz, Little Shop of Horrors, and one of my personal favorites, Labyrinth. You're a founding member of the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and you're also an Academy Award winner. Okay, and you've worked on films, I mean, the list goes on here. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 101 Dalmatians, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Golden Compass, Sweeney Todd, Prometheus, Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and the upcoming Jurassic World 3. That's just a few of your little film credits there.
Thank you.
It's amazing, isn't it? If I were to be honest, it's a bit show-offy. Really.
I'm sorry.
So as we've just seen, I mean, you're a hugely respected Oscar-winning creature and makeup effects supervisor, right? So it's obvious why you were hired to head up the creature department for the new films, particularly Episode 7. What was your first meeting with Kathy Kennedy like, and what was your original brief?
Okay, so it's really interesting that in actual fact I never had a meeting with Kathleen Kennedy.
Didn't you?
No. Kathleen is an amazing lady. She's sort of more of a presence, really, to be honest. We came across this film in a very strange, roundabout way. So it was really a case of just joining the production, and it was a very organic process. And Kathleen would always be there, but you never really sat down and was sort of briefed by Kathleen as to exactly what she wanted. I think she's incredibly smart at listening to what people are saying and the ideas that are being put onto the table, and just steering them in the right direction. And that's what Kathleen's continued to do through all of the films. So, we have a meeting, Kathleen's there, she's in the background, and when Kathleen says something, you listen to what she has to say, and it's normally something incredibly useful, incredibly, puts you back on track. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, when you first met J.J. Abrams, was it difficult to convince him that, you could offer something to his filmmaking palette, as it were?
Well, the first meeting with JJ actually was quite interesting because myself and Gustav Hojan, who is the animatronic supervisor, my animatronic supervisor, were asked if we would go to a hotel in London and meet JJ. I had never worked with JJ. I had no idea of how to take him, and he was actually quite difficult to read. He sat us down, and him and a few members of Bad Robot sort of asked some very, very difficult questions of us. And so we didn't really know whether or not we were going to work on the film or not. But there was certainly a point at some time during that interview that clearly he must have made a choice about us. And he literally stood up and announced, sort of said to us, "Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you." So it was like, okay, that's amazing. We're going to be working on a Star Wars film. And then I think really from there, JJ has this, I think just this way of looking at people. And once you've gained his trust, he is the most incredible person at believing in you, probably more than we believe in ourselves. And I think in some ways, we were giving a short period of time to put together a series of tests to show him, and you probably saw some of those. The Happavore was quite an abstract sort of cutout, huge cutout, and yet he believed in us totally. He would look at that, and he immediately had conceived of what that creature would look like when we were in Abu Dhabi, and actually he even invented the moment in the film at that very first showing that we ever showed to him. So actually convincing him was much more, I think, about him knowing that he had the right people in his team. And then once he's sure of that, he supports you the whole way.
So seeing your creations could sometimes inspire the directors in creating, pushing it a little bit further. Talk about the different directors you've worked with over the course of the more recent Star Wars films and their different approaches and the way that they used your effects.
I think Force Awakens was definitely the beginning of it all, because in many ways we started at the lowest level of expectation. I think what was very interesting to me, having been part of this industry for most of my life, to work with directors who are aware of practical effects because they grew up with them, but actually have no experience of working with them. So in many ways, we always start a film with each director, and we do a series of things which we call show and tells. We put on this sort of piece of theatre for them to show them what might be possible. And I think we both ourselves and the directors feed off what the imagination is then generated at that point. And so JJ is almost, it's impossible to sort of say to JJ, you can't have it practical. I mean, it's just, that's a no, that's not what, we must try to do that. And I think, for instance, working with Ryan Johnson, Ryan was just, he sort of came into it once this had been established, and his feelings were, well, what can I do? Where can I take animatronics to a place that is, what can we do with it which we haven't done? So let's take it out of the studio, let's put it on location, let's do whatever we can. And so I think each director has come along and tried to challenge the previous directors' use of practical effects, and to really just try and do as much as they possibly can practically. So, it's really just like a sort of slow growing process. As the confidence builds in what's possible, then each director comes with sort of a higher bar of what they want to try and achieve.
Well, you mentioned the show and tells there. Now, on other films that I've worked on, these are usually just, a board on the wall with some illustrations on, and the director will approve them from those illustrations, and then the character becomes a reality. But I remember, particularly on The Force Awakens was the first time I'd experienced this, but if you're a character in one of these films, you have to then, for the show and tell, so this isn't about shooting the movie or anything, this is about demonstrating to the director that this could be a character that you could either use or not use. So we would spend, a fair few days rehearsing scenarios, little sequences between the characters, and then be on standby for when the director was ready to come over from filming to see all of this. And we'd get word that he was a minute or two away. We'd be standing by with the heads on, and then we'd burst into life. And this whole kind of sequence would be going on. And then JJ would walk through and experience it with you while you talked to him about it. And we would interact with him, but in character. Yeah. It was incredible.
I think what it is that it's really worth considering that I think, many, 20 years ago, practical effects were the sort of, in many ways, the go-to effect. And, there would be a lot of preparation, there would be a lot of, there's something very special coming onto the set. And everything was, the filming process was accommodating this approach. I mean, nowadays, we don't have that luxury anymore. And what we have to do is essentially become part of the cast. And the goal is to go onto set with creatures, as you're saying, and characters that you've played, Warwick, and for no one to think there's anything special or anything different about you in a creature shoot than there is to be next to, Daisy Ridley, who's playing the scene. And then in that way, we become integrated and we don't become special. And I think that's really important, and that's what those shows and tells do, I think. They humanize the creatures, they make them personable, and it allows the directors and the rest of the crew to sort of, and cast, to sort of gain an affiliation with them.
Well, they become personalities on the set, indeed. Very much so, because of the puppeteers and the performers are so fantastic that they do become part of the cast, absolutely. Yes. Now, Neil, explain to us how digital technology and the practical effects that you work with can actually kind of come together to help us create these illusions.
So I think originally, the sort of whole optical world was one where, in order to be able to bring an animatronic character to life or a puppet character to life, you had to hide the ways that you did it. So, for instance, if it was going to be operated by a rod, or if it was going to be operated by strings or any of those things, they had to be hidden. We had no way of hiding them. And although the birth of digital technology was rather horrifying for the world of practical effects, what it also did was to liberate us, because now we can be incredibly lazy, I suppose, which means that what we can do is we can build characters that we are operating from the outside, or that we see aspects of their of the human anatomy poking through. And we know that later, digitally, that can be removed. And what it does is create a character practically that is almost, it would have been impossible in any other way, but it also opens up endless doors. And as you can see from what's rolling on the screen here, so the wires and things here, we don't have to worry about those. They will be digitally replaced. And so the discussions now with the guys at ILM and the digital supervisor or the effects supervisor on the film is, how can we achieve the effect as much as possible practically, and then digital effects come in and just add that extra little bit and take it into a place that hopefully the audiences haven't seen too much of.
So in a sense, that technology can influence your design, because you no longer have to design out the performer. You could leave their legs sticking out and not worry about it. And it would then, you could create a character that once upon a time wasn't possible.
Absolutely. I mean, look at the porgs. I mean, there are 4 people round each porg. It's like, come on, give me a break. Can you imagine trying to have done that a few years ago?
Now, it is fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of...
So again, he would have been shot in the cockpit. There was 4 puppeteers in that cockpit as that sequence was being shot, and obviously they've all been removed. This is Proxima from Solo, and again, this whole puppet was built on a polearm rig. There were puppeteers in the water. There was puppeteers inside her body. You can see the rods, and you can see all of these puppeteers that are bringing it to life. But again, through the magic of digital, that can be removed. And so, to everybody on that set, Proxima is existing in that moment in time. And everything can be achieved in real time and be directed. And we know that the digital technology can help us out.
And it's so much easier for the actors to have something to play against.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that was Daisy's first reaction to BB-8, was, the fact that BB-8 actually rolled on to the stage and had a conversation with her was just enthralling. I mean, up until that point, she would have had to have looked at essentially, a stick with a tennis ball on the end. Suddenly she had the real character there. Yeah. I mean, there are times, I have to say, that Brian Herring, who performs BB-8, is in a green suit, a tight lycra suit. It's a sight to behold, it has to be said. You see a scene and you think, this is just insane. I mean, you actually, by the time that you've removed Brian, by the time you've removed the rods, you've also removed just about every other thing that's in the set. But again, JJ and the directors will hold on to that. So I think that's where the strength and that's where the jewel in the crown is to have something there for the actors to really relate to. It's priceless.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Neil, as well as creating hundreds of brand new characters, you also were tasked with recreating some legacy characters for the new films. What sort of challenges did that present for you and the team?
I think the biggest challenge is you have to leave your ego at home. It's way too easy to sort of look back on what the Star Wars characters were of the past and think we can do this better or we can improve upon it. And actually, the process of going back and looking at any legacy character has been incredibly humbling to us, because what you do realise is that the amazing artists of the day, Stuart Freeborn, if you look at what Stuart created, was just. The man was a brilliant artist, and we sort of stand on his shoulders. And so, whenever we go back to look at a legacy character, it's like a sort of archaeological dig. You sort of the further you delve into just how wonderful their work was, the more that you become respectful of it. And that's, to me, was absolutely essential for all of the characters we've had to do.
Well, you've mentioned Yoda there, and I think we have some footage now of you working on that character.
Yes, well, I think before we look at that, I mean, I think Yoda was is one of the most iconic puppets or iconic characters in film history, as far as I'm concerned. So, one, it was incredibly delightful to do that. Secondly, it was just incredibly daunting, because he has a face and he has an anatomy that people recognise, and you really just can't you know, the idea of just getting that wrong or in some way changing it became almost sort of, you know, that was just not permissible. So hopefully all the characters that we've done, we've been as faithful as we possibly can, and I think Yoda was one of those.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look.
Hello Frank, my name's Neil Scanlan. Frank, I had the privilege of working with you many moons ago on Little Shop of Horrors. I was part of Lyle Conway's team. I had a meeting today with Ryan and we learned that you were very interested in performing Yoda. We had hoped that right from the start, kept our fingers crossed. So it's great news to hear that you'll be involved.
One, two, three, go.
Oh, bad for me, sorry.
No, that wasn't bad, that was shitty.
You have spies here.
Oh my God.
I'm still upset that he hasn't aged a day.
Oh, Skywalker, mystery.
Sweet little guy. Amazing.
Beautiful.
That was obviously an incredible privilege to have Frank do that. You know, to revisit this character and also have the original performer of it was I think amazing. And I think the thing that sums that up most is that when you're filming on a film set, normally people are pretty used to what we do and pretty used to the whole filmmaking process. And it's actually quite boring in some ways because there's a lot of sitting around and doing nothing. And the scene with the fire was shot exterior at night time in the middle of winter, and it was freezing cold. The burning tree actually was a welcome addition to the evening. I remember being up there at the top, and I was dressing Yoda. Frank would be inside a pit that was below with his arm, and you know, holding a puppet on your arm is very, very tiring. And we would dress Yoda each time, and the cameras would roll. And I remember during one of those sequences, I sort of turned around and looked behind me and looked down the side of that artificial hillside. And there must have been about 50 or 60 people on the set, and there was not one person that was saying a word or anything. They were totally silent and utterly captivated by Frank's performance. It was like I think every single person was living out their Yoda moment for real. It really was for me a piece of movie magic and a piece of you know, something I'll hold very dear to my heart you know, forevermore, I think. So. To me, there within lies the power of an amazing performance, an amazing puppet, which is incredible.
And Neil, in that clip, we saw somebody who both of us know very well, who
Indeed.
recently left us.
He did.
I wonder if you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, I bear with me, folks. Unfortunately, I'd like to say farewell to a very dear colleague of ours, who unfortunately we lost a very short time ago. Indeed, he left us today, and that was Steve Wright. Steve Wright was, you'll have seen Steve in the video there. Steve made the animatronic aspects for Yoda, as he did for so many of the Star Wars characters. And he was, you know, an incredible engineer and also a very, very special person. And within the effects community, he was incredibly respected and incredibly loved. And you know, on behalf of my team and everybody who knew Steve, I would just like to say, you know, we'll never forget you. And you know, it is a terrible loss.
Absolutely,
Indeed.
absolutely.
Yeah. To Steve.
Now, Neil, you've worked on hundreds of characters. in the Star Wars galaxy, but I thought it might be fun just to pick 5 of them, perhaps, and talk about those characters in more detail. But I've got a unique way of choosing those characters.
As you do.
And I'm going to need somebody from the best seats to help us. So
Okay.
let's have a game of R2D Who.
R2D. Who?
You, sir, are going to join me. Where? Out here. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the Julian Glover lookalike. Here he comes. Now, sir, no pressure. Sit down there. That's right. You've got to make your wife very proud.
Okay.
Okay, so hold that, because we're
Got
going to
it.
need to hear you, all right? So what we're going to do now, we're going to show you an image of a Star Wars character.
Okay.
But his head will be obscured by R2-D2's dome. All you have to do is guess who the character is, and if you guess correctly, Neil and I will then have a discussion about said character.
Wonderful.
Simple. How are you feeling, madam? What does that laugh mean?
I think she's not confident I'll be successful.
All right, let's find out. Make sure you can see a screen.
Okay.
Let's see the first image. Okay, who's that?
Chewbacca?
Let's see, is he right? Yes, he is! One down, 4 to go. Okay, so Neil,
Chewie.
Chewbacca,
Absolutely.
one of the legacy characters.
Indeed. So the first thing about Chewie we realised was that if you were George Lucas and you were looking to create this character called Chewbacca, what you really want is someone to walk through your door that's 7 foot plus, has incredibly wide set, beautiful eyes and a very strong jawline. And you know, how lucky was that for George when Peter Mayhew walked through the door and there was his Chewie. So to try and emulate this was obviously, we had to find somebody, and as you all know now, Jonas plays Chewie. And we were you know, quietly confident that we could do this well, and so we set about doing it, and very quickly realised that we were hopeless at doing this. Thankfully, there are no photographs that exist of our original Chewie. And then almost at the point where we were just trying to, I had sculptors working from Madame Tussauds, and we were trying to reverse engineer what does Chewie look like underneath. And a colleague of mine walked in, he said, I have something for you. And I thought he'd probably bought me a can of beer or something for a place on the film. And he said, I have an original cast of Chewbacca's head.
Wow.
And it was like, you're kidding me. And he said, no, I did a little bit of work experience with Stuart Freeborn, and as a present, he gave me a cast of Chewie's head. And so that day was an amazing day for us, because it literally allowed us to then go ahead and make Chewie with the likeness, knowing that that likeness was exactly the likeness that Stuart Freeborn had created. The second thing was that the original Chewie suit was knitted by Stuart Freeborn's wife. She actually knitted it.
I can imagine her sitting in Stuart's front room, you know, just... Wow.
And you know, we're sitting there thinking, yeah, this is insane. We can't knit this suit. But actually what you realise is that she didn't knit it because that was the only way they could do it. She knitted it because that was the perfect way of doing it. Because there's something about the way a woolly jumper moves and the way it stretches and the way... And so indeed, although we weren't able to completely emulate that, we do have a team of ladies who knit what we call the Chewie cowl, which is the area from the top of his head down to his chest. And that then is haired, one hair at a time. Each hair is placed in and knotted one at a time. So you can imagine it takes a team of nearly 6 or 7 hair people, almost 6 months to make one Chewbacca suit.
Wow.
They are incredibly labor intensive. And again, hopefully we did that character justice, and he is as wonderful and as adorable as he was in the original film.
Absolutely.
Hopefully. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to look at the next image.
Okay.
Okay, let's have it. Ooh. Right, it's on the big screen behind you as well, if you want a real close-up look.
Yes,
Who do you think that is?
Boy, I do not know.
Well, have a guess. Have a guess.
Well, it's not a porg.
No, it's not a porg. But I've actually noticed something, because when I was creating these images, I didn't notice there's another one with his head sticking out from the front.
Guess who?
So you basically, the dome's removed already, but so does it make it any easier?
No, it does not.
Hang on, wait there. Give me that.
Okay.
Let's go and ask the missus. Quick, you're the Star Wars expert. What's that?
I cannot remember the name of that creature from The Last Jedi.
You can't.
No, it's the milk creature.
Milk creature. Okay, let's remove the dome. There it is. Neil, milk creature.
Well, in some ways, that's exactly the purpose behind. So you're right. We call it a sea cow.
Sea cow.
And that's what it was called. This is where I was saying that different directors throw different challenges at you, and this was Rian Johnson's creation. Rian had this idea that what we could do is we could build this character and like part characters, and literally film them on the shoreline in Ireland. And it was like, well, you got to be kidding me, really? You know, we could just shoot this on a set and it could all be perfect. And no, Ryan wanted to do it for sure. So we approached this in two ways. We had the actual location LiDAR scanned, which meant we knew exactly every single lump and bump of the rock that you see this character sitting on. That was then chipped out using a 3D process at real scale, and we then sculpted our sea cow to fit like a jigsaw puzzle directly into the set. So we went through the normal processes of doing this as an animatronic character, and then realized that when the only way to get this character to the shoreline, set it up ready for filming, shoot the sequence and get it out, was to fly it in on a helicopter. So it was conceived in two halves, the top half being the head and the neck, the bottom half being the body, and literally like a submarine, the neck would fall backwards, and we literally sealed in for an entire day 2 puppeteers.
Really, a whole
literally
day?
Sealed them in. They went in about sort of 9 o'clock in the morning, and we took them out at about 7 o'clock at night. They had Coca-Colas, they had plenty of food,
Plenty
diapers,
of milk. Was there milk in there for them?
diapers and milk, absolutely. Luckily, they didn't have to use the diapers. But that's, that was exactly how it was done. And it was, again, an example of just saying, wouldn't it be incredible to put that effect for real, give Mark and give Daisy the real thing on the location, and the whole thing of milking the cow and then drinking, obviously, the milk was again shot for real, and it just sort of sold the whole sequence. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, an extraordinary thing. Again, with a huge amount of help from digital, because the puppeteer that operated the head in particular, and certainly the flippers, were also rod operating them, and were in green suits. So. And I think there was also a time when an American couple had taken a boat ride and had decided that they had no idea from the distance that they were that this thing was being operated by puppeteers. And so they took all these photographs, and this huge thing went out on security. Security was like, you've got to apprehend these people before they get to the shore. And as the story goes, I think that security did a deal for several free meals if they were allowed to delete the photographs off the cameras. And
wow.
So, indeed, that's what was happened, yeah.
That's kind of like sending in the Men in Black, isn't it?
It is.
Silence them. Fantastic. Well done, good. So that was the second one. How are you feeling?
Well, maybe I'll do better.
Okay, so that's the sea cow. You're never going to forget that now?
No.
Okay, all right, let's look at the third image.
BB-8?
He's got it.
Good.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's BB-8, of course.
Yeah.
So, BB-8, I mean, what a legendary character.
Absolutely, and I've probably heard me tell this story before, but I liken this to the Picasso drawing. If you know the story, that Picasso once supposedly ordered a meal and couldn't afford to pay for it, so he did a small sketch on a napkin, and that napkin was then sold, I think, at Sotheby's for millions upon millions of pounds many years later. The original design for BB-8 was given to us by JJ on a napkin. Little tiny, little half dome on a round ball, and effectively said that's what the new droid's going to look like. Jake Lunt, one of our concept designers, took on the design, which had already been taken quite a long way by ILM, and worked up the finer details. But it was as you'll see from the video, it was quite a challenge to find how to bring this to life in a way that was in a sense user friendly and film friendly. And so, again, you can see this is Brian Herring. This was the first prototype that Josh made, which was just one day Josh came to me with this little ball with a handle on the top and a handle on the side, and we can realized instantly just how much character, and that's what's so important about BB-8 and all the creatures we make, is that you should feel that they are a character. He's not devoid of emotion, he's not devoid of intelligence, he's all of those things. And by putting a human behind it, then you get that human performance coming through. And so nearly all of the sequences in the film that we could do, we did practically, and where we couldn't, then digital would take over. That's a wonderful moment, isn't it? And there were many versions of BB-8 in the end, but they all consisted of some way, shape, or form having somebody, mostly Brian, connected to it in a blue or green suit with a blue or green rod. Yeah, and was pushed around like a wheelbarrow.
Wow! I mean, it's amazing because I for one, and I'm sure many people here would assume that BB-8 is a digitally realized character because.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
but
amazing.
I think you should be very careful
because it surely couldn't exist. I mean, in reality, that's.
You stand by that, Warwick.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, look, it's BB-8. Wow, may I borrow that, please? BB-8, hello. We are honoured to have you here. How are you? Oh, great. And are you enjoying celebration? Was that too many stairs? Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah, I know what you mean. Does anyone here speak BB-8? Good. What's that you want to say? Yes, I am very famous. Yes. And you're honoured to meet me. Oh, you'd like my autograph? Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'll do an autograph later on. Yeah. I'm the most famous person you've ever met. He's delighted to be here. Delighted. Fantastic. Oh, BB-8, a couple of your friends are here that I'm going to bring out now. Is that okay? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce now people who we've already mentioned in the show so far. Please welcome Matt Denton and Josh Lee. Welcome, Matt. How you doing? Good to see you over there. Hey, Josh, welcome. Welcome. Good to have you here. Fantastic. So, a couple of friends of BB-8's here.
Hello.
Take that back again. So, gentlemen, how are you finding celebration?
Amazing. This is actually our 4th celebration.
Is it?
Which is incredible. It's flown by. We did Anaheim, London, Orlando, Chicago, right?
Yeah. Here we are. Now, you guys, you are like the geniuses behind BB-8 and other characters like this. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about... sorry, what's that, BB-8? Oh, you got to go. Oh, you got a photo shoot to go to. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, BB-8's got to leave us, I'm afraid, but thanks for being here. Oh, he's so cute. Fantastic. Well, I'm glad he's gone, actually, because I really want to talk about his insides.
Yeah.
You know? So, BB-8, Matt, is a hugely complicated piece of equipment, even though essentially it's a ball and a half a ball on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In its simplest form, yeah.
So you were tasked with actually creating that for real, because we talked about the puppeteered version, which had rods and things that were removed digitally, but they wanted something that they could...
Yeah, so I think Josh and I were tasked with that problem.
I think the first thing there was that, BB-8 was such an amazing character that the idea of, R2-D2 going down the red carpet, and BB-8 followed, running down the red carpet with a man in a green suit behind it was just never going to happen, was it? And so that was the reason you guys got
Josh and I wanted to go to a premiere.
Yeah, that was the main reason. We wanted to come here, really.
Yeah,
main reason.
And come here.
Yeah, so it was very difficult to make the ones for Force Awakens. We had to make several versions. It's also really difficult to make a sphere. Actually, that's quite a difficult thing to do. One that you can take apart and put things in, mechanisms. But really, in the end, we knew that we wanted to come here. We wanted to go to premieres. So there had to be a way of making that thing roll and the head not fall off, which is a big problem.
But we have the Force.
Oh yeah, that's true. And we have tractor beams.
We have the Force.
Yeah,
And,
so
and you
that's
know,
okay.
at the end of this, Force Awakens, these guys literally went on a world tour with BB-8. It became the BB-8 roadshow, didn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know how many countries you went to,
Yeah.
but I think you were adopted by the Chinese.
Yeah,
You
Japanese.
were Japanese.
We had a rider that they had to sign before we turned up. And
Great. It's good times. Good times.
Such is the love and power of a droid.
Yeah.
Now, we learned that the BB-8 is obviously full of cutting-edge technology. Have you taken what you've learned there and applied it to any other characters?
Yes, I mean, you know, I have to say that what's been incredibly marvelous is to have people like Josh and Matt, and these two guys are just one of 180, 200 people that are my crew and the crew of people that put the characters together when we're at our very strongest on a team. And every single one of these people are amazing artists that contribute an enormous amount on an individual level. And it's that ability for all of those people to come together that we've been able to, I think, take the sort of animatronics was at a point when digital took over where it had become incredibly sophisticated, almost too clever for itself. And I think the most amazing version of that, and I would pay tribute absolutely to Stan Winston for his work on Jurassic Park, was the crowning glory of animatronics. And so when we returned back, we came back, I think, looking at things being much more simple. But over time, we've gained our confidence, and this crew of people have learned to sort of, you know, begin now that next curve up with all of that experience behind us. And so now with some of the technology you see in BB-8, some of the things we're able to do with Matt's control system, people like Joss, who are phenomenal engineers, people in fabrication, all of these things are now coming together to create characters which I think will start to hopefully become something new that people haven't seen before. And I think that Six Eyes was a character we made for Solo, probably shows that better than any. And so,
okay, well, let's before we talk about him in more depth, let's take a look at him in action.
Eyes on your own cards, buddy. All of them. There. Well, now I see yours.
So while we've been watching that clip, Matt has come over here, and look who we have here, ladies and gentlemen. It is Six Eyes, or to give him his official name, he's Argos Panos, I believe.
Fantastic.
Argos Panos, yes. So Matt, what are you doing now?
So, well, hopefully he's going to power up, because there's nothing like doing a live animatronic demonstration in front of a huge crowd of people. And so what I've got over here is a very cut-down version of our control system. And so I'm going to show you how I can control his eyes using traditional puppeteering techniques. So when we saw this character, the sculpt came through. I think Martin Rezard sculpted it, correct? Yeah. It was his design. We saw this, all these eyes, and Gustav, our engineer who created the mechanism inside of it, we both looked at it and went, I've got a really good idea for this. So it's one thing being able to do this and control it manually, and I can take control of just one side as well. So when he does the little look, we have one eye go off to one side, which is great, but we then thought we can take it a step further using some of the technology that came out of BB-8. And usually this is obviously worn by someone. This is actually worn by Derek Arnold inside the suit, and it's not a light thing, but if I pick it up, okay. So effectively now it's free animation, because whatever Derek does, as he looks around, and he was looking at his cards on the table, so Six Eyes does his thing. Let me just turn it around so you guys can see it, because you've got the best seats in the house, right? So yeah, so it's called kinetic, what I call kinetic animation, because it's based on Derek's movements as he's in the suit.
And how do you achieve that then, technically?
So it's basically got a gyro in the head, a bit like we have in BB-8, a bit like you'd have in your mobile phone, and some software that I've written. And there's 3 computers in there actually But one computer is just watching what he's doing, the movements that are going on, and tracking those movements. And from that, we do really simple tricks, like if I make a gross move to look down, he throws a blink in. Because when you move your eyes, you tend to blink. So it's just little tricks like that just to make it look more lifelike. And then there's little jitters going on, so he's constantly looking around and stuff.
And what's really impressive is that Derek Arnold, that played this character, who is nearly, and Maury, you'll know this more than anybody, is potentially blind most of the time, got to the point where he could sense what was happening literally to the head, and just literally started to perform it in his own right, didn't he? And many a time we would just sort of walk away, and for part of that scene, Derek would just perform him on his own.
So I would literally just give him a point, you know, like I'd say, okay, chin down a bit, and he'd lock onto that. He wouldn't be able to see it somewhere on the table, and he'd hit that mark every time. As you know what it's like being blind in a character. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's absolutely brilliant to see. And what's fantastic as well is that you can design all of this, but still allow a performer to actually be inside there, allow space for his head.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrific.
So hopefully we'll be able to take the head off and you can have a look inside. And it's, I mean, again, Rory, you can probably describe your experience with some of this.
When you wear one of these heads,
you can imagine what that's like on a real person. So
you've got all of this equipment, these servos, and they're screaming at you in there because they're high frequency. So there's this really loud screeching sound.
And there's Derek.
It's very, very heavy, and yeah, there's metal work that's just very, very close to your face. The way it's designed.
Just have to disconnect him for a second, also turn him upside
disconnecting.
down.
So we can look in. If we just take it to this camera down here, perhaps we'll be able to see up inside, just so everybody can get a view of the mechanics here. They can see the last thing that we see as performers before we go inside.
Okay, let's have a look in there.
Can you see in there at all? It's going to be tough to get this, perhaps.
Can we see the front of that?
You can see all of the exquisite engineering and work that goes in there.
I can't see what you're seeing, but hopefully you're getting some of that.
That's incredible. Incredible.
And I don't know whether you'll get the noise at all.
And just to give you an idea of how that relationship works, a character like Six Eyes, or literally is a combination between the person who's playing the role, which in this case is Derek, a person on the outside who's taking the controls and performing the facial features and the dialogue and those things. And then there's normally a person, myself, or a man called Paul Casey, who is talking to this person through a series of, through an earpiece and giving them direction in order to allow them to know where they're going. So it's an incredible thing to be inside there. All you can hear is servos going inside your head. You can't see anything. And at the same time, you're being given all of this instruction from the director, from people who are trying to help choreograph your move and help get you through the crowd. And it was something very interesting you once said to me, Warwick, which was that in some ways, by not being able to see, was better because you internalize the performance and somehow you step out of your own body
the character
and become something in the thing, which I thought was a really interesting comment. But it's a grueling thing to do, isn't it? But again, maybe you'd speak
it
about
is
how
grueling.
you feel
But when
about
you
that,
see the result in the movie and what's going on outside, it's very much a team effort. The performer, the people that created it, and then the puppeteers who are actually giving you the facial movement on the outside.
We had a moment on set where someone was watching a monitor backstage and said, "How are they doing that live CG on set?" And someone went, "You want to go around and have a look?" So
that's incredible. Well, that's Six Eyes. We're going to move on to another character. Thank you very much, Matt, for bringing that. That's terrific. Live demonstration there. So, sir, this is your final bit of work for the day here.
And
we're going to show you one final image.
Warwick, one day we are going to get one of you people out there to come up. We're going to dress you in a costume. We're going to put you in an animatronic head.
That'd be great.
And we're going to get someone else to come up and perform it. That's my dream. So there'll be a little collection box after this for volunteers.
Okay, so who is that?
Well, that's my favorite character from that movie, K2.
Let's have a look. Yes, he's right. Well done, sir. Thank you very much for playing R2D Who. You can go and sit down. So K2SO,
yeah,
I mean,
K2SO.
Again, one of these characters that captured people's imaginations. How did you contribute to that?
Well, I think firstly the design, is everything. And Luke Fisher, who really designed K2SO, I think did an amazing job of finding a droid that could, carry the personality and carry the sort of strength and power that K2 has. I mean, there is obviously, rumors of a potential TV series with K2 featuring in it coming out. So, we look forward to that hopefully being greenlit and happening. And I think that it's a really interesting relationship that we have, and a relationship I'm very proud of, between ourselves and the digital people at ILM. I mean, ILM to me represents, the greatest digital house ever. And there was there was a time in which, their inventiveness and their ability to put these things together was just, there was no competition. And now we find ourselves in a place where we're able to work along with digital artists and create something. Actually, everything that we did for K2SO, you have never seen on the screen, because none of it made it to the screen. But what it did do is allow Alan Tudyk, this is Josh, again, a man of many talents, Alan Tudyk to perform K2SO at real height, with the limbs at the right length. He really could literally bring this character to life, and then obviously ILM were able to then replace it with the digital character, and you capture everything of Alan and all of the magic of the ILM animators on top.
Fabulous.
It's I love that sort of, is what I mean is there's so much in the spirit of what ILM and Star Wars does so well, is to combine the old with the very latest and repurpose it in a way which I think is fascinating and enchanting. Yeah, amazing.
And to enable ILM to do their work, and to enable Alan to be on set, very much looking like the character, you created K2's arms, didn't you, as well?
Indeed, we did his arms and his legs.
So, Josh, can we have a look at those?
I'll just talk a little about the limbs. Obviously, because of recent, there have been many people, soldiers, for instance, who may have lost limbs in conflict, especially legs. The new prostheses legs that are now developed to help these people walk again are incredibly amazing. I mean, and what you find is that they are programmable to the point that someone who has lost their legs can literally get into a set of these prostheses and start to walk again. And so K2's legs were based on that. And Josh developed those along with Alan, so that you see Alan was pretty free to move around, and then also created these limbs, which again are servo operated. And Josh, maybe you want to talk
amazing.
about those.
Look at that, I'm shaking hands with K2. I mean, you've got a strong grip. You have got a strong grip. So how is this working now? There's no cables or anything running from your fingers. It's electronic.
We did try it with cables, but then the first time I tried it on Alan Tudyk, he gave me a look which made me think I was torturing him. So we then decided that maybe it should be electronic. So whatever I do with my hand, the servos in the hand just copy it, meaning that you can go up to someone and sort of touch them on the shoulder. And with that, you get the sort of, the material responds to the hands, and so it connects the CG character to the rest of the set, to the rest of the actors. And that's really why these are needed.
Absolutely amazing. They exactly follow what you're doing. That's terrific.
And if they exactly follow as well, it means the actor doesn't have to worry too much about what is his performance. He just uses his performance and it copies him.
Brilliant. Thank you for bringing those. Let's give Josh a big hand. Oh no, he's already got two.
Lovely celebration.
That's fantastic. You've been practicing that, haven't you? That's really good. That's really good. So we talked a lot about, various processes throughout this show, and I just want you to take us really briefly, because we are running quite short of time, through the kind of the creation of a creature, just the steps really that you go through, just so that everyone can understand what's involved.
Okay, all right. So the first process is, our job initially is to really get inside the director's head and find out, Ryan would say, oh, this character looks like this, it's a sea cow, and you have no idea of what he really means. And so the concept guys essentially sketch up to 100 or so, possibly more, designs And bit by bit, you know, we're going to go through this particular one. You'll see why I've picked this one later. But this is how we approach the design. So we'll do lots and lots of sketches. We'll do lots of different, what we call maquettes, very small models. And bit by bit, we'll be able to sort of get to the point where the director says, that's it, that's my design. From there, we then sculpt it at real size. And mostly, these things are still sculpted in the traditional sense by sculptors who literally put their hands on clay and sculpt them as real 3D entities. This model would have been sculpted at real size, and then it's then molded. The molding process means that we can then create from those molds as many components, as many parts that we may need in order to bring this creature to life in the real world. And in this particular case, this character is going to be a suit that's going to be worn by a real dog. Because not only do we like working with people, we like working with animals. And so we scan the dog and we sculpt it around the shape of the dog. And what we see here is what the process called fabrication, which is where we build the muscle suit and we build the skin on top of the dog. And bit by bit, we literally change the anatomy of the animal into something new. You can see here exactly the same process is going on. We make a little skull cap for the dog to wear. We treat the animal in exactly the same way that we would Warwick, for instance.
Yes.
Probably we treat the animal better, if we were honest.
They're not as demanding, are they, as actors?
Absolutely. And they're more patient as well.
And our contract riders.
But this is the muscle suit, what we call the muscle suit. This is the suit that now has been defined and made, which moves with the same movements as the dog does. This is an early foam suit that we do and make for what we call, basically a dog has to rehearse like an actor has to rehearse. And the first thing we need to do is to get the animal comfortable with wearing this exterior skin. And so the animal department who get involved will probably start by just putting a little padded onesie on the dog, like a sort of padded set of pajamas, and then we may add a little bit at the front, and bit by bit, it's incredible to realize that the dog will become happy in this little world. And if you remember the crystal foxes from Last Jedi, we made a little straw suit for them to get them involved. See the little green tail there? That's removed by digital later. And you can see here, this is, literally getting the dogs ready. We take them out, have a breather, have a few snacks, and are ready for the next take. There's the lovely little dogs.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And that's the same process, more or less, that we do for every character that we make. And whether a puppeteer goes on the inside, whether we puppeteer on the outside, they are the basic steps that every single character goes through in order to be a practical animatronic, if you would call it that. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to some quickfire questions.
Oh, crikey.
Okay, for you guys. All three of you are going to take part. Just a 1 or 2 word answer, okay? We call this Galaxy Questions. Okay, so. Are you ready, gentlemen?
Yep.
Question number 1. What is your favorite Star Wars creature?
Yoda. BB-8. Is that a creature?
Yeah, that's all right. Character.
Speeder bike.
The speeder bike. You've gone for a vehicle.
Spaceships and speeder
Okay. You like to break the rules, don't you, Josh? Okay. Have you appeared in any of the movies?
Yes.
No.
Nearly.
Okay, you said yes, Matt. Briefly, who?
Is it Crate, the red planet with the white?
Oh, yeah.
I was a trooper in the trenches getting shot at. I probably died. I don't know.
And Josh, you said almost.
Matt was blocking me with the camera.
Massive gun.
Funny, that.
Fantastic. Favorite Halloween costume?
Oh, crikey, me. Chewie.
Chewie? So you've dressed as Chewie?
I've never done that, actually. I'm not very good like that. I mean, I'm incredibly shy. Isn't that a terrible thing to say?
Ghostbuster outfit.
Ghostbusters, that's a good one.
Classic sheet over the head. Goes. Simple, effective.
Okay, in a word, what were you like as a teenager?
Oh, dear.
Geeky.
I didn't know these questions were going to be asked.
You were geeky. What about you?
Nerd.
Normal kid.
Normal. What's your favourite alien?
Alien. E.T.
Crikey.
E.T.
E.T.
Alien.
Alien.
Yeah.
Good. Josh?
E.T. again.
E.T. again,
I love
okay.
that film. I love that film.
Porgs or Ewoks?
Oh, come on.
Ewoks.
It's going to have to be, isn't it?
Ewoks, yeah.
Well done, gentlemen. Well done. Favourite Star Wars movie?
Oh,
well, Jedi, actually.
Jedi.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi?
I was the right age.
Yeah, Jedi.
Okay, yeah.
Empire Jedi. So, Jedi.
Empire.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Great. Which dashing actor has portrayed the greatest number of your aliens and creatures?
I don't know.
No, you don't know. We'll find out later. Favourite droid? You've kind of answered. It's got to be BB-8, yeah?
Yep.
Or has the new one stolen your
I
heart?
was going to say, little Dio is yeah, he's winning all the way at the moment for me. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the final question, which franchise has the best fans? Careful how you answer this.
Star Wars!
The best makers as well. You're such good makers. All your costumes.
Truly amazing.
Yeah, really great.
There they are. There they are. Look at them all. Wow. Can we turn the house lights down now? It's getting a bit scary. Okay. Now, Neil, just before we kind of wrap up here now, I just want, if you've got a few brief words to pass on to any aspiring creature fabricators out there who want to get into this industry, just a few words just to kind of inspire them.
I think, it's the same in all walks of life, really. I mean, I think you should follow your dream. I think you should believe in yourself. I think you should not be discouraged by any setbacks. I think you should be a team player, and you should work hard. And I think if you do all of those things, I think things will come to you.
Very good indeed. Now, before we wrap up, Neil, you have made me an unofficial Star Wars record holder.
Wow.
Okay, you might not know this, but thanks to you, I hold the unofficial, I keep saying this word unofficial because it hasn't been verified, record for playing the most characters in Star Wars films. Now, this doesn't include Wicket, Wold, Grimy, or Yoda, but you are responsible for these, okay? Here they are.
That's fantastic.
First up, we have Woolovin from The Force Awakens, Weetie Sobe, Wadibin, Kedpin Shoklop from The Last Jedi, the fighting droid in Solo, Chinchilla Creature, doesn't have a name, from Solo, a spaceman from Solo, DDBD, and the Tray Droid in Solo.
Yay!
Thank you, Neil.
Fantastic.
Now, you've been instrumental in allowing me to create this unofficial record, and I thank you very much for that. I don't know whether it's because you like my performances or because I'm just always hanging around your workshop, kind of loitering with intent.
You're an amazing performer. I mean that sincerely, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That's lovely, isn't it?
Incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a huge celebration thank you to Josh Lee, Matt Denton, and the brilliant Neil Scanlon. Thank you, gentlemen, very much indeed. Thank you.